level.
Jeff Wadlow, I'm so grateful for you to be here today, and I want to get into just all of it.
All of it. That's a little terrifying. Do we have to do all of it? Can we just do most of it, maybe?
I mean, we can leave out whatever you want.
No, we'll do it. We'll do all of it. Let's do all of it.
So first of all, like you, so wait, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia. And kind of split my time between my mom's house there and then spent a lot of time in Warrenton, Virginia, where my dad had a horse farm, believe it or not.
And did you ride horses a lot?
I did ride horses a lot.
Were you a cowboy?
I spent some time out west growing up. Actually love Wyoming. Ended up building a house there with my brother during the pandemic because we love it so much. So yeah, love sort of Western culture and horses.
Oh my God. So what movies did you grow up on? Was that sort of is that what inspired you? Clint Eastwood.
Let's just be honest. When I say love, I like it. I'm not obsessed. Like I don't walk around in cowboy hats.
Right. You're not
tassel shirts.
So you're not watching Yellowstone.
And I do love Yellowstone. I do love Yellowstone a lot. I think the show is amazing. I'm a little bit behind right now, but I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. Most of the movies and TV shows I grew up on though were like the iconic movies and TV shows of the 80s and 90s. I'm such a product of that time. I'm constantly referencing them. I was in a pitch the other day, and I just kept talking about all these movies from the 80s and 90s, and one of the executives is quite a bit younger than I am, and I could see her eyes just sort of glazing over.
Wait, how old was she?
She was probably in her like late 20s.
I was gonna say, I was like, was she? Yeah. I was like, she has no idea.
Yeah.
So she has no idea about like Shawshank Redemption.
Yes, such a great movie.
Oh
Frank
my God.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
Oh, it's one of my favorites. I think that might be number one. That and Braveheart.
Yeah, so good.
Gladiator.
So good. I mean,
so good.
Braveheart I've seen so many times.
Like at least 50.
Yeah, the double VHS cassette was constantly playing throughout my college years. I think pretty much within a 100-yard radius of me at any point during my college years, Braveheart was probably on a TV somewhere.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. I think I've seen that just over and over. That's like my go-to. Weirdly, my comfort food, which is not very comforting.
It's an intense movie. I saw it in theaters, actually.
Oh my God. I was 13, so I was kind of like,
I saw Gladiator opening weekend, and a fight broke out in the movie theater. I saw it at the Cinerama Dome before it became the ArcLight, before it went out of business. It was one of the last movies I saw there, and there was actually a fight in the dome during the movie.
So they were trying to emulate what they saw.
Listen, they were entertained. They were entertained.
Are you not entertained? So it's kind of like Fast and the Furious when you're watching Fast and the Furious and, everyone comes out like racing their cars thinking they're in the movie.
What's so funny about that is I think the first rated R movie I ever saw was Road Warrior, the second Mad Max movie. I was probably like 5 or 6. I saw it with my dad, who was recently divorced. He took his 2 sons to see this movie. And I'll never forget when we left, we were driving. He's like, I feel like just sort of like flooring it and like racing this car. I was like, we were like, do it, Dad. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do it, sons.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How did you get into films?
Honestly, I don't really remember. The story I've always been told is that I walked out of Empire Strikes Back with my dad, and I think that came out in 1981, so I would have been 5 years old. And I said to him, what does a director do? And he said, well, he kind of tells the actors how to play the scene. He decides where the camera should go. He's kind of in charge of telling the story. And I looked at him and said, yep, that's what I'm going to do.
That's amazing. And then how was that process? Did you start taking any acting classes, directing classes in high school? Were you like, this is it? And or did your parents encourage that? Because normally in this business, they're like, oh, you get a real job. What are you doing?
Well, I'll answer the second part of the question first. I was very fortunate in that my parents, my step-parents, because my folks got divorced when I was very young, my grandparents, everyone encouraged me so much. I mean, they encouraged me to be practical and smart about my choices, but no one ever told me I couldn't do it. No one ever said, get a real job. They were really just amazing. That's the good news. The bad news, I was in like a small town in Virginia before the internet, before digital video. I mean, your only choices were, and I kid you not, community theater or public access TV. Those were kind of the outlets for doing anything outside of school, and I did them both. I started like a public access TV station. I did every play I could. Most of the plays are musicals. I cannot sing to save my life. So
that's brave.
I was often like the funny character or the villain because I just couldn't sing, but I still put myself out there. And I got a VHS camcorder and just started shooting little things when I could. And honestly, just and kind of immersed myself in Hollywood culture. I would read Entertainment Weekly cover to cover, Premiere Magazine cover to cover, and just try to absorb as much as possible so that I could get ready for the career I imagined.
Yeah. So then, and then you went to Dartmouth. I mean, that's a great school. I think they have a pretty great program there.
Yeah, no, at the time it was actually the only Ivy League school with a film major. And I was hell-bent on going to California. I knew my career was in California. I knew that's where I had to be. And I was looking at film schools in LA, and I also got into Stanford. And
great school.
It was a great school.
That was like on my list. I went to Duke instead, but I was like, damn it, they didn't.
A great program. And I remember I went and visited Stanford, and they just had no film classes. And so I sort of felt, oh, well, Dartmouth does have a film major, and California is not going anywhere. And then when it came to the film schools, my mom actually gave me some great advice. She said, listen, do you want to be a technician or do you want to be an artist? I said, well, obviously I want to be an artist. And she said, well, if you want to be an artist, you have to understand the world you live in. So I really think it's important for you to get a broad-based liberal arts education before you go to film school. You can go to film school for graduate school. You can learn all that later, but you need to get a broad-based liberal arts education first. And I did, and she was right.
Nice. And you also come from media family, right? Isn't Katie Couric she's your aunt?
Correct. She is my mom's little sister.
Oh, got it. Yeah. So were you sort of immersed in that world already?
Not really. I mean, Katie, obviously incredibly famous, an icon, but
she's an icon.
More in that sort of journalist space. So it wasn't really film and TV. It felt kind of adjacent, but not really the same thing. I mean, I'm very lucky to have had her in my life. I mean, she's still in my life.
Yeah.
But, you know what I mean? But she always encouraged me. She took me to SNL when I was 13 years old.
Oh my God.
I got to stand on the stage. She has certainly made some introductions for me over the years, but the truth is, even someone like Katie can only crack open the door. You have to be able to walk through it on your own. And because she wasn't really in film and television, it hasn't been as helpful as you would think. I mean, I had to really figure it out on my own, but I'm very grateful for her because we have very similar personalities and we make each other laugh. And I always turn to her for advice. And I actually lived with her for a little while when her husband passed away from colon cancer, Jay Monahan. Wow. I was a senior at Dartmouth. And she called me up and she said, I know you're going to go to LA next year after you finish school, but would you consider moving in with me and the girls? She had 2 daughters who were 8 and 2 at the time. And she said, listen, we're going to have a nanny. It's not like I need help, but I would love to just have a fun male presence in the house, as we're sort of still dealing with this incredible loss. And I said, sure. So I moved in and I lived in the playroom on the pull-out couch.
Oh my God.
For a year. And the joke was I went from the fraternity to the sorority because I was now living with all these women. Yeah. And it was actually a really incredible year for me. I grew and changed so much. I think it's really when I kind of came into my own as an adult. And I learned a lot of life lessons. And honestly, it was a really powerful year for me too, because that was then the year that my mom got sick and eventually passed away from cancer as well. So it was a really transitional, important time, certainly in my life, and I think in Katie's life, and also the lives of her 2 daughters.
Yeah. What was the biggest takeaway and what was the biggest lesson that you learned going through that really tumultuous but kind of amazing, expansive time, but also really tragic and sad? And those moments are the moments where they push us. They can either allow us, they can give us so many opportunities and we can use that to learn and grow, or we can, curl up in a ball and go, oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I always loved to laugh and tell stories and try to find the fun in a moment, no matter how dark it might be. I mean, something I talk a lot about with my movies, that there's always levity. Even when making horror movies, there's some laughs because that's sort of, in my opinion, human nature is to find humor in our darkest hours. So I really learned to embrace that. But probably the main lesson I learned during that year was just to really show up for the people that matter to you, that you have to do whatever it takes to be there for them. There was this one moment where Ellie had a parents' night, and I had a job interview in the Village, and she was going to school on the Upper East Side, and Columbine happened.
Whoa.
And so Katie had to fly out last minute to cover that. And so Ellie wasn't going to have anyone at her parents' night. She's an 8-year-old girl.
Oh, my God.
So Katie got in touch with me. She's like, I need you to be there. And I was like, I have this job interview at the end of the day. And I was just like, and it was, I was like literally in the waiting room. I mean, it was happening.
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay. And so I just turned and I was like, I can't do this. I'm sorry. And I like laughed. And it was totally a scene from a movie. It was raining. I couldn't get a cab. Like I just hauled ass uptown, and I like ran into the school like soaking wet and got there just in time.
Oh my God. Did she really appreciate it?
I mean, she was 8. She probably had no idea what was going on.
But it was
She
great.
was like, great, cousin Jeff is here. Where's mom? I was like, well, she had to fly out. And
Oh my God. And did you go back for that interview?
no.
That was it? And what was the interview for?
It was for a company called October Films, just to be an intern. You know, it wasn't, I was like 22, 23 years old.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's
I
fine.
think
It all
you're
worked out in
doing
the end.
yeah, I think you're doing
It all
okay.
worked out in the end.
Okay, so then you end up going to USC. Is that a graduate program?
Yeah,
or?
so I went to USC. I got my MFA there, my Master of Fine Arts. USC, they actually have 4 programs in the film school for graduate studies. They have screenwriting, they have critical studies, which ultimately is sort of a PhD track, which takes you into academia. Then they have production, which is the film school that everyone knows about. Then they have a 4th program called producing. It's actually called the Peter Stark Producing Program.
Way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I did the Peter Stark Producing Program. It's smaller than the production program. They only take about 25 students a year. And it's also only 2 years instead of 3 years. And my point of view at the time was I'd been on a bunch of movie sets. I had PA'd. I had been an intern. I had been Pierce Brosnan's assistant on the Thomas Crown Affair. So I'd kind of spent time on film sets, and I just didn't want to hear the like, this is a C-stand lecture and this is an L cut. I felt that wouldn't be particularly useful for me. And the producing program was more like filmmaking from the top down. So it's like, this is a budget, this is a schedule, this is a marketing plan, this is what development notes look like. And so all of those things have been so much more useful for me as a director over my career. In fact, just understanding a movie schedule allowed me to win a 67 Mustang in a bet. So on my second movie, the head of physical production said, this is a 45-day shoot. And I'm like 29 years old.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let me look at the board. I looked at the board. I went home. I put it in Movie Magic. I did my own board. And I came in and I gave it to her boss, the head of the whole studio. I said, I can do it in 5 days less. He's like, you can? I said, yes. And when I do it in 5 days less,
You're going to give me this car.
I want the 67 Mustang that's in the movie. He goes, deal. If you can shoot this movie in 5 days less, you can have the 67 Mustang. And I did it, and I got the car.
Wow.
Yeah, so that program has served me very well.
And so that program, didn't you start a program where it's like an adrenaline?
So that's a totally different thing. So then a few years later, I was on the board of the Virginia Film Festival. I still am. I've been on the board for over 20 years. The head of the film festival at the time, a guy named Richard Herskowitz, came to me, and I'm trying to remember the exact way this started. So they used to have these themes for the film festival. I'm trying to tell you the short version, but the theme that year was speed, and they were asking people on the board ideas for how they could program movies around the theme of speed. And when the board meeting was over, because there's like Academy Award winners on the board, I'm like in my late 20s. I felt like I totally didn't belong. When the meeting was over, I went up to Richard and I said, hey, I didn't want to say this in front of everyone because I'm the new guy and I'm just a kid relative to all these incredible filmmakers. But I think you could do a filmmaking workshop during the film festival. It doesn't just have to be about watching movies that are related to speed. Like, let's make movies and do it really quickly. And we can do it over 72 hours. And it'll be like the 48-hour film project, but instead, because the film festival had this educational mission, we'll bring in mentors to help all the teams make the movies. I'll be one. I'll get some of my industry friends to come back and do it. And he was like, that's great. You're running it. And it's been going, we're about to have our 20th year.
That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
And so you mentor, what is it, like 500 people?
So it's basically
from all ages?
It's a 72-hour film workshop where we bring in 12 filmmaking teams. Each team has 3 filmmakers. And we give them all a different genre, but we also give them the same prop and the same line of dialogue. And then they have to pitch us ideas for a 3 to 5 minute short film. And their idea has to be greenlit by me and 2 other mentors. And then once it's greenlit, they have to write it. They bring their scripts in the next morning. We help them rewrite it. I'll actually write new scenes for them with them. And then we help them cast it. We have a database of community actors in Virginia. We help them cast it. We work with them with their production plan. Then with the other mentors, I go around, I visit all their sets, and I'll help them direct a scene. I'll be like, okay, we're going to do the scene together. Let's get them on its feet. I'll show them sort of the rhythm of directing a scene. And then we edit them all together in this incredible organization called Lighthouse Studios, which is a not-for-profit, which teaches filmmaking year-round. And then on Saturday night, we screen the movies and have a big party.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Oh my God. I want to, go back for a second. You were working on one of my favorite movies, Thomas Crown Affair.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that movie so much. Oh,
super
okay,
fun
okay,
movie.
okay. So, what was that experience like? You were Pierce Brosnan's assistant.
Correct.
And I mean, what an iconic '90s film.
Yes.
It's so iconic. The man with
Yes.
no, the man in the suit, no
Yes.
face.
Renee Russo, come on. She's so amazing. Dennis
on.
Leary's in the
Yep,
movie as well.
so good. He's so good.
Yeah, it was John McTiernan directed it. Leslie Dixon did the rewrite on it. It was an incredible experience. So I finished film school and I moved in with my Aunt Katie in New York City. I was living in the playroom. I forgot to tell my best joke about that time. I used to say to girls in bars, "You want to come back to my place and do a puzzle?" Because of the playroom. Get it? No one took me up on it.
That's kind of wholesome. I like it. That's cute.
And so I had to get a day job, and my job was working for Pierce. And I actually, they had this thing back then. I don't know if they still have it. It was called the New York Mayor's Office of Radio, Film, and Television. And they had a list. And you used to call this number and you entered in your fax back number and they would fax you back the list. And it would list everything shooting in New York City with their production office addresses.
That's so cool.
So if you wanted to apply for a job, you knew where to send your resume. And I did that, and I sent my resume into the Thomas Crown Affair offices. They asked me to come in, and they didn't tell me what the job was for, but I interviewed with Pierce's current assistant, who was becoming an associate producer on the movie, and another executive on the film. And I started to figure out that it was to work with Pierce. And
usually you go up the like what I've noticed is, especially like some of my friends who went to Duke, they would be someone's assistant.
Yeah.
Like Brian Uncless, who we used to, he used to date my roommate. So I would see him like every day, we'd be playing songs and doing the thing.
That's fun.
So he would come over, and then eventually I think he was like the assistant to like a Universal, and then assistant to like Color Force, and then Hunger Games. He literally took the book to his boss and is like, "We have to do this book, Hunger Games." So that's when he like became a producer, and then he went up the ladder, and now he was a producer on I, Tonya and working with Margot Robbie. And,
I mean, that's when Hollywood really works its best, is when it's kind of this apprentice style workplace environment where people are learning from other people, and then they get their opportunity to rise up the ranks. And certainly that was true for me working with Pierce and just getting to be around John McTiernan.
Yeah.
So when I got the job, they actually asked me at the end of the interview, they said, are you comfortable driving a car in New York City? Because Pierce has this, incredibly expensive BMW that he got for being Bond. I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And the end of the meeting, the very end, as I was walking out, I said, "So if something happens to the car, am I like personally responsible?" Because I was definitely lying. I had never driven in Manhattan before. But Pierce was a great boss. And
driving Manhattan, it's bumper cars.
and the truth is, I was really more his PA than his assistant. My job was just, I was 23 years old. My job was to follow him around and get coffee and water for him whenever he needed it.
Totally.
But what was great about it was that, like most PAs and most people working on movies, they're nowhere near where the magic is happening, right?
Yeah.
I got to stand on set next to the camera watching John McTiernan direct Pierce and Renee and Faye Dunaway when she was there. And so I learned so much during that time and really got along great with Pierce. In fact, he asked me to go on to Bond with him in London, but I didn't want to leave my aunt and her kids, so I stayed in New York.
Well, that's sweet. That's so sweet. I'm like, oh, damn it. I'm like, that would have been so cool. But, it's kind of like sliding doors. You never know.
You never know. You never know.
You know what I kind of learned recently? There was this episode of Sean Ryan. He's like got the #1 podcast, and he was talking about
Sean Ryan, the TV writer.
No, Sean Ryan, podcaster.
Okay. I know Sean Ryan, who wrote The Shield.
Did he? No, not Sean.
Different Sean Ryan.
I think it's Sean Ryan. Is that Sean Ryan? He was. I
can take a look.
He's got like the #1 podcast right now. He was talking about how he was a SEAL, Navy SEAL, and he
definitely not the same Sean Ryan. Definitely not the same Sean Ryan.
He was a Navy SEAL, and he did Ibogaine. He had like a lot of PTSD, and then when he had done it, he sort of had this like, it's an induced sort of near-death experience where you have like a more intense ayahuasca journey where it lasts like sometimes 2 days.
Wow.
But my point of this story is you were making a point. Hold on. Where
we were talking about Pierce.
Sliding doors.
Sliding doors.
So sliding doors, the concept that I was sort of grappling with as I was trying to be like, okay, let me try to see if I can induce a near-death experience and a life review where you go through your entire life and see like, how did I make these decisions? How did I make these decisions? Why did I make this? And the conclusion I came up with, like in the middle of the night, it's like 4 a.m, and I'm like, damn it, can my brain just fucking stop? And there was this moment that I realized that there's, we have these like familial patterns that we're sort of stuck in, and that fate sort of, it's sort of these like strings being pulled. So no matter what, we were always going to do what we were going to do. So you were always going to be with your family. Like that was sort of like a part of this concept of fate. Like, do we have free will or do we have fate? I think the more we become aware that we have free will, then we're not sort of like beholden to, I don't know. It was just this interesting concept that I've been sort of playing with.
Yeah. I don't really have any regrets in life because I do think you make the choice that you needed to make. If you made the wrong choice in hindsight, that was a lesson you needed to learn. So it wasn't really the wrong choice. It was the choice you needed to make.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. So then now after that, so then you do a film for USC, right? And that gets a lot of accolades, that wins a bunch of awards, and then. How did you end up making that film? It was a short film?
Yeah, that's a whole long story too. So I got to USC and just immediately attacked it like it was a job. A funny thing about film school is I remember I went to like the barbecue and they had everyone there from all 4 programs that I mentioned. So it was a large group, and you look around, you realize like, oh my goodness, most of the people here are only here because someone said, what do you want to do with your life? And they said, I like watching movies. I guess I'll go to film school. And watching movies and making movies
are very different.
I think USC, which is the best film program in the country, I know I'm a little biased, but they're lucky if they have one like director working per class, right? It's a very hard business to break into. And so you have a huge group of people coming out there with graduate degrees, and if one of them actually builds a career as a director, it's a big accomplishment. So the odds are stacked against you. So I went in there like it was a job and got way better grades than I'd ever gotten before, and just applied for every scholarship, every opportunity. I got a Coca-Cola grant to make a short film, and as a Starkey, that's what we call the people in the producing program. You actually don't have to make a thesis film.
Oh.
But they have this thing called the Stark Special Project Grant, which is money to go and make a movie. And it's not connected to a class or anything. But I was like, I'm going to get one of those. Yeah. I got one of those. And with my 2 best friends from the program, we made this film that it was based on a story I came up with. They wrote it, and then they produced it together, and I directed it. And unfortunately, I did act in it too, which was a big mistake.
You're not proud of your acting?
No.
I thought you did musicals.
Well, fortunately, it was an ensemble movie. At that point in my career, Warren Beatty was my mentor. At that point in my life, Warren Beatty was my mentor, and I had this like
Pierce Brosnan, Warren Beatty. Man, you're killing it, sir.
I had this ridiculous idea that I like wanted to build a career like Warren Beatty's. I've given up that dream. I gave that up a long time ago.
You kind of look alike.
I appreciate that. And so I was still doing a little bit of acting at the time, and so it was an ensemble piece. So I played one of the parts. I have a good Warren Beatty story about film.
Oh my God, you got to tell me this. Yes.
But to finish this one, we made this movie called The Tower of Babel, and it starts with a monkey at a typewriter in this like surreal white psych, and a voice explains this theory that I had heard in college when I took Linguistics 1, which was a gut as a way to get out of a science class. But I learned this interesting theory, which is that if there are a finite number of letters in the English alphabet and you assume a word can't be infinitely long, there actually are a finite number of words. Like you could generate every word that could ever be made with those letters, right? And if you assume then that a book can't be infinitely long, that at a certain point at 10,000 pages it ceases to be a single book, given that everything is finite, you could actually generate every book that could ever be written in the English language with every version of every word.
Okay.
And that's where this concept of a billion monkeys at a billion typewriters typing, one of them would accidentally type Romeo and Juliet. And one of them would also type the next Stephen King novel that he hasn't even written yet. And one of them would type the story of your life, all by accident.
I feel like we're getting into multiverse.
Right?
I feel like we're getting, this is where we're going.
And so then the movie was 3 different stories, a comedy, a thriller, and a drama shot in different styles with different actors. The only thing that all 3 stories had in common was it's the same dialogue in all 3.
Whoa.
But the words meant different things given the context. So the first line of
This
each
is
story,
everywhere, everything, all at once.
the first
You're
line
the
of each
original.
Yeah, well, it was even weirder than that because it's not less about like actual people and dynamics. It's more about expression. So the first line was, "Oh my God," and the comedy it was a joke, and the thriller it was because someone heard a gunshot, and the drama it's because a woman realized she was pregnant, right? And so then as the stories develop, they start to crash into each other. It gets a little bit into that sort of multiversal stuff.
So it's kind of like Crash meets
A little bit.
everything, everywhere, all at once.
A little bit. And then in the end, we come back to the monkey and the typewriter, and the big idea is that, yes, while language might be finite, how we choose to express ourselves is infinite.
Wow. I fucking love that. That's amazing.
And it was called the Tower of Babel.
Do you have, when you think about stories, are you really out there in the universe? Like, are you thinking of like super high, big concepts when you're creating stories?
Actually, quite the opposite.
Really small.
No,
Really tiny.
I think about the audience is what I'm always thinking about. My thesis at Dartmouth for my film major was called The Audience. And I wrote this paper about an experiment that you can't really do, but the idea being I wanted to acknowledge that the audience is actually an active participant in the process, that you're not making a movie. What I'm making is the experience the audience has when they watch the movie, the meaning that they create when they perceive the story through the filter of their own lives.
Yep.
So you're saying, I'm not making the movie, I'm making the feeling that you have when you watch the movie, and you are just as important to that process as the actors, as me, as the DP, as anyone involved. And without you watching the movie and having a feeling when you watch it, I'm not done, right? So I'm acknowledging that the audience is a part of the process. And so when I think of stories, when I try to think about the TV shows and movies that I want to make, I'm thinking, what is the audience going to feel? How is this going to affect them? What kind of meaning are they going to make when they perceive this through the filter of their own experience? So that's where my brain immediately goes always.
Interesting. Do you know that, I forget what the theory is, but basically that when you observe cells, they change just by the observation.
Wow.
So what is it? It's not string theory, but damn it. Tanner, can you look this up?
I can try to.
Okay, interesting. So you always have the audience in mind, because I know Rick Rubin. So he's one of my favorites, and he's always like, I don't know, like I don't play instruments, and I don't do this, and I just, has no shoes, big old beard, and he's amazing, and he's sort of just like, I just want to do it because it's like coming from my heart, from my soul. Is there a piece of that when you're keeping the audience in mind? Is there something that you're like? In addition to keeping the audience in mind, is there stories that sometimes it's like there's like divineness being, you're channeling something. It's like, when like God is speaking to me and I'm like, okay, wait, I'm writing this down. Oh, okay,
Yeah, there's some of that. I mean, I would say it comes from sort of three pots, right? I'm thinking about the audience, what they're going to feel, how are they going to think when they perceive this story through their own experience. I'm also like looking at other stories that are being told right now. Like I try to be very aware of what's out in pop culture,
Totally.
what's popular.
Same.
You have to respond to that.
Yep.
You can't just live in a cave.
Yep.
And then I would say the third bucket is my own experience and my own feelings. And as much as I intentionally don't make things that are autobiographical, I'm not interested in that. There's this great Renoir quote, the filmmaker, not the artist. He says, each filmmaker just makes the same movie over and over and over again.
That's me. As a filmmaker, I just...
And that's because it's ultimately a reflection of something inside of you.
Yeah.
So, for example, I just finished this big action script for Netflix, and I knew the characters and I knew the story going into it. I had it all plotted out. But by the time I finished writing it, the theme had kind of emerged, and I didn't think of the theme ahead of time. It just kind of comes out while I'm writing. And the theme was ultimately one of regret and self-forgiveness because I'd had like a really bad breakup. And so I was thinking about poor choices I had made.
Yes.
And clearly, like, even though the character didn't just have a breakup, it's about something totally different. Ultimately, it's a female lead. She's thinking about her past and the choices she's made, and she's unable to move forward in her life because she hasn't found a way to forgive herself yet. And that's what she does over the course of the film. And I didn't plan that. It just kind of came up as I was writing.
Very Tower of Babel. Same thing, different meaning.
Yeah.
To jump in here, Susie, it's called the observer effect, or the observing effect. In science, the term observer effect means the act of observing will influence the phenomenon being observed. For example, for us to see an electron, a photon must first interact with it, and this interaction will change the path of that electron.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's almost like another version of when a tree falls in the woods, it doesn't make any sound if no one's there to hear it. I mean, obviously, if you're observing it, you're recognizing it, something needs to happen for you to see it. I mean, there's a relationship there. So I like that, and I will borrow that the next time I talk about my audience theory.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Hell yeah. So you were writing a character who made some interesting dating choices, and that was somewhat.
Oh, not even dating choices. Let me be clear.
Oh, okay.
It was totally, when I say the theme emerged from me, the story, it's about this. It's an action movie. It takes place in Europe. It has nothing to do with dating. But this idea of regret and self-forgiveness started to emerge because I was going through something in my own life where I regretted some choices I had made. I was unhappy with myself for having made those choices.
Yeah.
But in order to move on and move forward in my life, I was starting to figure out I just had to forgive myself. I had to say, hey, you screwed up, and you've done the apology tour. There's nothing else to do other than to let it go. You got to let it go.
Yeah.
And what I started to realize the character needed to learn, because she had this trauma in her past, was that she needed that too. And she needed someone to say that to her. And that was what had happened to me that was really powerful. Someone had said to me, hey, you got to let this go. You got to forgive yourself. You just got to move on, because I was beating myself up quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I wrote a scene then after that happened to me where another character says to her, you're never going to be able to live until you forgive. You got to let this go. You got to find a way to move on. And that was a lesson she had to learn. So it was just an example of sort of, art imitating life, imitating art. And so I can't help it. So even though I think about the audience and I think about what's working in the marketplace and what people want to see, ultimately a lot of what resonates, at least in the things I work on, come from me, because I think ultimately as storytellers, as artists, you have no choice but to pull from your own experience.
Yeah, completely. Do you find that, this has been my experience when I'm on set, where if I'm writing a story and I'm trying to, it's sort of like in the subconscious, right? Where you're like, I don't really know what story I'm trying to tell, but I'm trying to work something out. You're like, okay, my life is here and I want to go here. You want to go on this journey.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, it's almost like a mission statement to a certain degree, where you're like, okay, how do I want to get from here to there? You're doing the hero's journey.
Yeah.
And so as you're writing this story, you're sort of mapping it out for you of how to navigate your life. And what I have found is your life changes through stories.
Yes.
Do you find that this process is alchemical?
I mean, my life is filled with stories. My life is telling stories. One thing feeds the other. And it's interesting. Everyone has a different process. What you just described actually is kind of the opposite a little bit of what I do, in that I don't necessarily start out with a big idea or something I'm trying to work out. I actually start with something much more ground level. This is it's a story about this character, or I'm seeing a scene like that. For example, that Netflix movie I was just talking about, I don't want to go into too many details because it's not out there yet, but there's a huge action sequence that involves a hot air balloon. And it was because I'd been in a hot air balloon and it actually crashed. And
oh my God.
Oh yeah, it was crazy.
Oh my God.
So I wanted to put that in the movie, but I didn't know what the theme.
Go back to that story. We're gonna come back.
I didn't know what the theme of the movie was or what big idea I was exploring. But as I was writing this character and putting her through the paces and dealing with some of her issues that I'd set up, the theme started to emerge, and I realized, oh, this is what's going on inside of me right now. I didn't even have the sort of the presence of mind to say, oh, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is what's going on. I'm going to put it into my script. It just kind of bubbled up.
Totally. No, it's actually more subconscious. You're like, I need to get this out. I need to write this down. It's sort of how is your writing process? Does it sometimes as you're falling asleep and you're like, you think you'll remember it, you never remember it, so you have to write it down. You're like, damn it, I just want to go to sleep. I feel like it's right around that, as you're falling asleep, and then you come up with so many ideas where, characters speak to you, and then you have this flow of ideas, and you're like, damn it, because you think if you just let it go, I'll remember it tomorrow. You never do, so you have to write it down.
Well, actually, I do my best writing when I'm running. So I like to do marathons. I'm running the New York Marathon in a couple weeks, and so when I'm doing these training runs, I have no choice but just sort of free associate and let go. I mean, because you're running for 3 hours.
That's amazing.
Right?
How do you write those stories down?
What's amazing about free association is because you even let go of the idea of writing it down, so you're not committing to anything. So literally, your brain just starts spinning and going to all these crazy places, and I'll see the scenes, and I'll see different versions of the scenes, and I get feelings about the scenes, and the emotions just bubble up because again, you're not worried about how do I describe this? It's just you're just in this sort of reverie, right?
That's amazing.
And then when I come back from the run, then I sit down and I just start typing like crazy.
That's amazing. Do you meditate?
No. I probably should. I've had a couple people tell me that I should. And I don't think they mean it as like a compliment.
Why is that? Are you always
Like
in your head?
Your wheel is spinning a little too fast.
It's going really fast. Are you ADD?
I've never been diagnosed as ADD. I've had a couple people tell me that I am, which I find a little... Should I be offended when someone
No,
tells
I'm
you that?
ADD. It's totally fine. This is why we have to write things down.
I was at a dinner party and I was talking about my writing process, which makes me very hard to be around because because I over promise because it's the only way I can get things done. I have to build up tremendous pressure because I think I'm terrible at my job, and so I hate everything I write. But then when I over promise, then I create so much external pressure that it basically I take the critic out back and just shoot him in the head because like we don't have time for that guy. Like the guy that's telling you like you suck, like who stops you from doing things, the inner critic.
You can't kill him though.
No, when there's that much pressure, you're just like, shut up, man, get in the back seat because this car is going.
That's fair. Okay,
right?
that's good. You just put him in the back seat. Yeah,
and
that's good.
And so I create all this external pressure, and that's the way I get things done. And when I'm finally done, I look at it, I'm like, hey, this isn't that bad. Because the whole time I was like, this is terrible, but I just have to get it done. And then I finish it. And I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. And I always think when I finish a project, a script in particular, I'm like, why can't I just like write for like 2 hours a day every day? I get it done
I don't know
faster.
those people. Who are those people?
I don't know. I would get it done faster. I'd be less miserable to be around. I wouldn't have to build up all this pressure and stress myself out. But it's the only way that works for me. And I was telling this story at a dinner party, and someone looked at me and he goes, you have ADD.
I need a gun to my head. To write.
Yeah, if you need that kind of pressure to deliver.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
I mean,
so I guess I have been diagnosed by a dinner party guest.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. It kind of tracks because, I was a former tennis player, and being an athlete, it's like if you don't, here's the thing. It's like if there's pressure and it's like you have to make this shot, and you like, I'm great under pressure. Like under pressure, I deliver. It's like, we're losing light. We need the last shot. We need the tears. We need the blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you've got it. Like that's that's my go time. It's like, we're gonna lose like we only and it's always like, you did it, and I'm like, this is what I'm built for. But I think it's kind of like this like trauma based like, oh.
I'm the exact same. That's why I love directing. I love that game day energy.
Yeah.
I love showing up. I get there a little bit early. I eat my breakfast. I've got my shot list. I'm super prepared. I look at my AD. I'm like, when are we in? He said 5 minutes. I'm on set. I have my AD do a safety talk every day, and then I'm like, and here we go. And I treat it like it's the NFL, and the clock is ticking.
Same. I feel that. Do you you come with a shot list? Do you have everything mapped out, and then do you have to? So my friend, she was shadowing Chris McQuarrie, and it was sort of like they would when she would see it, it would just be. Everything would just kind of be thrown out. They would have an idea and they're like, okay, this doesn't work. Okay, scratch that. And then let's start from scratch, like on the day, in the moment, because sometimes shit happens. You lose the, this location or, something happens, it's raining and whatever. And then you have to like pivot. How do you, when chaos happens, what do you do in those moments?
Well, I guarantee you whatever Chris McQuarrie was shooting had a lot more money than anything I've ever shot.
It was Mission Impossible.
Yes, so they have the luxury of throwing out their shot list and coming up with a new idea. All of my movies have the budgets have not been small. I mean, I made a $60 million movie for Netflix, but every project I've worked on, we've had no cushion, cushion, and so I prepare so that I can deliver, basically. Yeah. My point of view is I show up every day with a shot list and a plan, and I know that as long as I at least get that, that we're going to be okay. But then I always leave myself room to improvise, to change, to combine shots. I allow myself to be inspired. My favorite moments in my movies are things I didn't plan, happy accidents. So I try to make sure there's space for that. But the only way you can have space for that is if you have a plan. Because if you show up and you have no plan, and you have limited time and money, then you're gonna suck up all that space that could have been used for happy accidents,
play,
just to try to figure out how are we gonna survive this day, right? But if you have, I almost think of it as like a survival plan. I've never said it that way before, but that's what it is. I'm like, as long as I get what's on this page, and I have a whole system. Like my shot lists are never longer than a page. I know if it's longer than a page, we're screwed.
Oh, really? Why is that?
We're not gonna make the day. We're not gonna make the day if it's longer than a page. Because I have a whole system. Like, so for each scene I'm shooting, I put down the scene heading underlined, right? So, but that denotes, okay, at least one line on this page means I'm going to need to take the time to move the cameras, block a new scene, even if it's like a 1/8 page scene.
Yeah.
And then and if it's one shot for a 1/8 page, that's 2 lines, right?
Yeah.
So I know that's 2 lines. But if it's like, say, a 3-page scene, and I'm going to have a master, close-ups, mediums, I'm going to have like 7 or 8 shots, I've only got one scene heading, right? Because now I'm in that scene. So there's a structure to it that just makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, I want to go back to the Warren Beatty story.
Yes, I was very lucky. So when I was living in New York with my aunt, I got to meet Warren through my aunt because they were friends. And I just hit it off with him. We're both from Virginia. My mother was the head of the Democratic Party in Virginia and a state senator, so I'm very liberal-minded when it comes to politics, as is Warren. And we just hit it off. And he loves to talk, and I love to listen. So we made a great team. And when I came to L.A., I'm trying to remember exactly how it happened. He offered me a job to be his assistant, but I was like, no, I'm going to film school. It wasn't going to work out. But when I got to L.A., he said, well, reach out and let's grab lunch. And I did. And what happened was I started having lunch with him, like, honestly, almost every month, maybe every 6 weeks for my 2 years of film school.
That's amazing.
So I saw him quite a bit. He gave me notes on the cuts of my short films. He did a lot of great things.
That's amazing.
And I would have lunch with him, and literally lunch would be like a 3-hour thing. Like I would meet him, and we would just sit there and I would just listen, and we would talk for hours and hours. He's such a great guy. I have tremendous affection for him. And what happened was I was in this class. It was being taught by Laura Ziskin, who's passed away. But she produced Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. Very prolific, very accomplished producer. Did produce the Academy Awards one year. She actually is one of the founders of Stand Up to Cancer with my Aunt Katie. Just a coincidence.
Wow.
But, yeah, amazing woman. So she was teaching one of our classes at the START program. And our only grade for the class, it was a producing class, was to find a producer, interview them about their first movie, and write a paper. That was it. That was the only grade. And so I called up Warren. I said, hey, can I come up to the house and interview you about Bonnie and Clyde? He said, sure. So I rewatched the movie a bunch.
So good.
Yeah, I watched it. I read a bunch of articles on it, and even read a book on it, and prepared all these like questions, thoughtful questions about it. And I get up to the house, and I started asking him questions. He's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm asking you questions about Bonnie and Clyde. He said, why? I said, I told you, Warren, because I'm in this producing class, and I've got to write a paper on a producer in the first movie they made. He goes, well, let me ask you a question. Is this a paper writing class? I said, no, it's a producing class. I just told you this. He goes, well, then why are you writing a paper? I said, because it's the only grade we're getting. I have to write this. He goes, don't write this paper. This is silly. He said, I'll tell you what. When is the class? I said, it's Wednesday.
He's going to come and talk.
PM. He's like, I'll come with you to class.
Oh, my God.
You can just interview me in the class about producing the movie, and then you don't have to write the paper. And I looked at him and I said, I'm picking you up.
Did you think he was going to be a no-show?
I mean, I've been around enough.
Yeah, to know what time it is.
Celebrities to know that
know what
sometimes
time it is.
they say things that don't necessarily always happen.
Yes.
And so we went down to the class together. I did get in touch with Laura Ziskin ahead of time and said, hey, Warren Beatty's coming to class with me. And I'm glad she did this. She said, don't worry, I'll interview him, which was great. So I didn't have to do anything. And so she interviewed him. And I'll never forget this moment till the day I die. We were walking back to the car, and like half the class followed us.
Of course.
And they're still asking him questions. And one of my classmates said, Mr. Beatty, like, why are you here? Why did you do this? And he stopped and he turned to them and he said, occasionally you meet someone who's going to make it. And I'm telling you right now, Jeff Wadlow is going to make it in Hollywood. And like my heart just soared.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful to him. And then when my mom got sick, he like called me up to the house and he handed me this 3-ring binder filled with pages and pages and pages of research on pancreatic cancer that he had done himself. He'd called up like CEOs of like pharmaceutical companies. He had all these handwritten notes in there. I mean, he's a great man, and I feel really indebted to him.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to move to the hot air balloon crash.
I did not think I'd be talking about that today. Yeah, I was in.
We talk about everything here.
I was in Morocco on just a trip for fun, and I saw this news story that inspired me to come up with the idea for this big action movie that I just finished for Netflix, the screenplay. And while I was there, I took a hot air balloon ride, and I don't know if you know this about hot air balloons, but you can't steer them.
Yeah, no.
the only thing you can control is the altitude, right? By how much you turn on the burner. But everything else is determined by the wind. And so I was in there with this
terrifying
with this woman I had been dating and this other random couple, and then these two pilots, like a more accomplished pilot and a pilot in training. And we went up, and they started freaking out. We were in Morocco, so we didn't really understand them. They're speaking Arabic, but they were definitely panicking. And they had given us this speech before we got on about like getting into the crash position, and some power lines were coming, and we started to drop really fast. And I turned to my girlfriend at the time and I said, get into the crash position. And she was like, what, why? And I didn't even take the time to answer her. I just dropped down into the crash position. They didn't tell us, but I knew what was coming. And we hit the ground and like bounced, and then the bus got dragged across the desert floor. And then eventually like the chase vehicles caught up to us, and they jumped out and they grabbed the ropes and they held it down, and no one was hurt and everyone was okay. And afterwards we were laughing about it a little bit with the other couple about how scary it was. And I'll never forget, one of the pilots heard us laughing. He goes, "Not funny for me, not funny for me."
What happened?
I think just the winds were stronger than they thought. And, you're in Morocco. I'm sure the regulations aren't particularly strong about how you get your pilot's license to fly these things. And I don't know. I just got the idea for a sort of like an action movie sequence with people like falling off baskets and the balloon going up and down and grabbing back on. And we had gone to this waterfall called Ouzo Falls in Morocco. And I had this idea about the balloon going over the fall. I saw this whole action sequence, and I hadn't even written them. I didn't even know what the movie would be yet.
You're literally living in an action film.
Yeah, and so I just finished that script. So I was inspired by that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How did you move on and let go and forgive yourself? I'm curious.
Interesting. Going deep.
Of course.
Going deep.
This is what we do.
Yeah.
We have tears, we laugh, we cry. People talk about anything and everything. Yeah.
I think at a certain point, I talk a lot about this idea in my life of this notion of grace. Like you just have to have grace for other people and for yourself, and you have to just acknowledge that we're all inherently flawed, and we're all just doing the best we can. And anytime I get upset or I get mad about something, I just really try to remember that and just create some space for this idea that this person isn't trying to make my life difficult, isn't trying to hurt me, that they're dealing with their own pain and their own issues and their own problems, and you probably don't even know what they are. And so I guess what I had not been doing was not allowing myself to feel that way about myself, right? So, and I think that was ultimately the lesson I had to learn over this last year, and it's still a lesson that I'm moving through. But I just had made some mistakes and I regretted them. And I think I just had to allow myself to accept that we all make mistakes. And I had good intentions and it didn't work out, and you just got to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. I was having this great conversation with one of my friends. Shout out to Todd Gallicano. It's probably like he's staying at my place right now, but it was like 4 a.m. for him and like 1 a.m. I'm like, oh my God. I was having this epiphany where if everyone's beholden to their parents' patterns and their parents' patterns, and it's sort of this mold that's set for you, right? And then you're going to live in this box until you break out of that, until you become more and more and more aware. Then you can start realizing that you have more free will, and that there's so much. Anything, all the great, amazing things are possible. But beyond, if you're living on these patterns and you're living on this like script that has been set for you, sort of this idea when I was able to kind of just forgive myself and like choices in the past, because you don't know what you don't know until you have to learn it. So it was like these lessons that ultimately you have to learn, and then you have more awareness, and then you keep going up a level, you keep going up a level, and you keep going up a level is kind of the idea. Or you just keep playing the same like game over, and then you like have to do it all again. You're like, why can't I get to the next level? Because you keep making the same mistakes. And
isn't it funny though that we feel like we have to discover this, but this is actually like a very old idea in humanity. I mean, you just look at the idea, the notion of reincarnation, right, in Eastern religion, and I'm far from an expert in any of these things.
No, I believe this. That we come back, we'll have to learn it in the next life.
I don't even know if I believe it, but this idea that if you don't learn something now, you're going to learn it in the next life, or you're going to be reincarnated even as something lower, right? Because of the lessons you didn't learn, and you just have to keep doing things until you figure things out. And so clearly this is not a new idea. Humanity has been talking about this since we could talk.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to me that we're sitting here like saying, and then we realize that we have to learn these lessons or we're going to keep repeating them. But the truth is that's the reality for all of us.
Oh, no. And for sure. I think
but it feels like an epiphany, right? Like even for me, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I got to do this until I figure it out. Well, guess what? All of humanity has known that since the dawn of time. So it's not really that big of a surprise.
Well, it's like you can know it mentally, but knowing it in your body, knowing it in all your being, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, like I feel like God is a guiding force in my life where God will be like, hey, say this at this time, don't do this, and blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, when I listen and I'm obedient, then my life like ends up being amazing. I don't listen, I fuck around and I found out. So like that was sort of my lesson. Then I'm like, damn it, sort of like realizing, and having to let go, having to forgive because I didn't know, like being in these relationships or whatever it is. And then you waste time and you're like, why did I do that?
But that comes back to my point of grace. You just have to extend it to yourself too. It's like, these are lessons that you needed to learn, right? You had to have these experiences in order to move forward.
Yeah.
Like even that one I was talking about, one of the main lessons I learned was that you can't be afraid. When you have a feeling, when you're like profoundly in love and it's like, building up inside of you, like you have to express it. You can't just be scared of that. And that was a lesson that I had to learn from that relationship. And that was my regret, that I never owned that feeling, that I was like too scared of it, that I pushed it away.
Yeah.
And then it was too late. But now what I've sort of realized is that was a lesson I had to learn. I had to go through that.
You pushed it away?
Yeah, I have to have that regret that I didn't express.
You're avoidant?
Oh, it was a little bit.
You're a little avoidant. You're like, love. Oh no, this feels smothering, and I feel scared. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. It was something I had to go through to understand that I needed to express it when I feel it. And
totally.
So I am grateful now for that lesson, and that's what I mean about extending grace. It's like saying, like, okay, you just had to make those mistakes so that you could have this feeling. So moving forward, things change.
Yeah, sort of the interesting concept about fate, where if you're working from that and you're working from this script and, you just keep going about your life in the same manner, the same patterns, the same, then, those people as well, if they're, there's some people in my life where they make very questionable decisions and they have to be in my life because they're, they have to be in it. And so I have to just be like, wow. And I have to accept it and know that literally they're trying their best.
Yeah.
They're literally. And so that was sort of the epiphany of, oh my God, this is you trying your best.
Yeah.
And because you don't know that there's another alternative that might be your higher self coming through, and maybe there's a better way to go about things. And so that was sort of this epiphany of full acceptance, of full just being like, hey, you're doing the best you can, and I'm not going to have this expectation that you're going to do things better or in this manner or whatever, and I'm just going to be like, okay, this is the best you can do, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've always felt that way, that you can't change anyone, that they're doing their best, and you just have to accept what's in front of you. It's one of the ways I direct. Like, I don't ever show up and try to be like, oh, I wish I could get this out of this actor, or, oh, I wish I had this piece of equipment that we don't have this today. I prep and I say, this is what I want. This is my vision for the scene. And then I show up there and I'm like, this is what we got.
Yeah.
These are the actors that I have. This is the equipment that I have. This is the scene that we're in. And I don't wish for anything that's not there. I try to just
that's amazing.
Make it work with what I have.
Yeah.
And I've always approached relationships with other people in my life that same way. I'm like, this is who they are. I'm not going to change them. They're not going to change until they're ready to. I keep coming back to this lesson I had to learn this year that showed up in my script, which was I had to give myself a little bit of that too.
Yeah.
Because I'm very hard on myself. I'm
Same.
like, why am I not a better version of myself? Yep. Why can't I work harder? Why can't I do more?
You went to Ivy League.
Yeah.
You're doing a marathon. You look like you're 30. You're 27. Oh my God, you're a Gen Zer. So Tanner has a question of what is the Superman superstition?
Superman superstition?
Yeah, I noticed you wear a Superman shirt.
Oh, wow. You're doing your homework over there, buddy.
Deep cut.
Yeah. I am not a superstitious person. I actually really don't. I mean, we have a much longer conversation about these sort of things, but I think superstitions are interesting because they're an expression of some aspect of ourself. I don't think there's anything like supernatural necessarily going on.
You don't believe in that?
But that expression of ourselves is powerful. So I'm not undercutting the power of it. I'm just saying I think the interesting part is not that. I think the interesting part is this.
Yeah.
But I do have one superstition, which I should probably try to look at through that filter, and I don't think I ever really have, which is on the first day of photography, I always wear a Superman t-shirt. Not the same one. I have different ones. But I always do. And for me, it's like I've always done it. So it's kind of like a luck thing. But also there's more going on there. Like on my movies, I want people to feel that I am giving it everything I have, that I am leaving it all on the floor, that there's nothing left. And that's true. Like there's been some days when I've been shooting a movie where I come home and I want to cry. Not because I'm like sad or I'm upset. It's just because I have nothing left. Like I'm totally exhausted.
Nothing left to give.
Yeah. It's, it's like when I ran my first marathon, I cried. Not because I was sad. It's just like I was just completely empty. The tank was dry.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I just had nothing left. And so that's happened to me when I've been making movies before. And the reason why I wear the Superman shirt is A, it's a superstition, but B, I want everyone to know that I am going to do everything I can. Like I am going to kill myself to make the best movie I can make. And I hope that that's an example that people will follow and that they will also give everything they have, that they'll never phone it in, that they'll never just treat it like a job, because I'm not.
Yeah. Do you think that like the team coach / team quarterback, what I've noticed, it's like, you're starring in a film and you set the tone. What I've noticed is like the number one and the director, and those are the two people that really set the tone. And
I use sports metaphors all the time.
Same.
And I really am not that into sports. So it's pretty funny that I do that. Yes, I use them all the time. I mean, on a movie set, I often think the director is the coach, number one on the call sheet.
That's what I say. Yeah, the quarterback and the coach. That's what I say. Yes.
Dead on.
Hell yes.
And I've even had moments where I've taken my number one aside and I've said, hey, I know it feels like I'm calling the shots, but this is really all about you, and I need your help setting the tone.
You got to do it.
I can't do it on my own, and everyone's looking at you, and this needs to be something that we do together, and I need more from you.
Yeah, you know what I noticed when I was doing a bunch of films that I was like, I had this 4-picture deal that I was starring in a bunch of like cute rom-coms and Christmas movies. But what was interesting is I kind of like you, like I'll kill myself. I will do, like I had 103 fever and I was like,
wow,
we missed one day and we were back at it, 101, just like, okay, I have the weekend. Let me try to get better because I'm puking into my hand. So this is probably like, I can't walk right at the moment. Wow. So I'm like, So yeah, you have to, but I do remember just being on set and just putting kind of very similar to you where I put everything I have into it. I'm like, let's, go rehearse. So we would have a really quick turnaround. It's like 16-day shoot, like it's or 14-day shoot. Like they just kept making it smaller and smaller and smaller each film. And I was like, damn. So each time we would just do rehearsals for like a week. So I was like, let's make this perfect. And that actually really helped, but that was sort of on me to be like, let's make this the best we possibly can. And then it kind of, everyone was like, oh shit, let's make it the best we possibly can. And also like I was putting my producer hat on when you're filming in 109 degrees in Christmas clothes in the middle of Romania where they didn't get the memo about AC. And so it's always really uncomfortable. Like this is what a lot of people don't know is that if you have a scene where it's summer, you will be in shorts.
Yes.
Sorry. If you're filming in summer and it's freezing outside because they're actually filming in December for whatever reason or something crazy. Like it's like, or it's like March and there's still snow on the ground and you're like, oh, we all have to be in shorts. Cool.
Well, one thing I try to do on all my movies is that I try to set them in the location where we're shooting, and I try to set them at the time of year we're shooting.
It's so much easier.
It just creates a reality that you can all ascribe to. It's just, why make something harder? So why make something difficult harder than it already is? Like making movies is very difficult.
Very hard.
Why do we want to run around changing all the license plates on the cars?
Well, I think it's kind of, it's like, hey, we have this time. These people are free. This is the lineup that happens. It's sort of like, okay, we have this amount of money. This is the time. Deal with it and, figure it out. But it was interesting to kind of put my producer hat on and, problem solve and try to be like, okay, producer hat, how can I help get more ACs? Even though I'm like, number one, I'm like, great, let's try to get ACs. Let me talk to you. Can we our friend, over here is about to faint. Can we, get some food? Can we get something? So it's sort of like, trying to problem solve and be helpful and try to contribute as much as you can. So like, as, when you're the team quarterback, you got to be, kind of like team captain,
Well, it's back to that thing we were talking about. When you show up, when I at least show up at the beginning of the day, I know that I have this sort of ledger of resources, time, money, and people. And then I have these creative goals I want to achieve. And I know I need to move those resources around to achieve those goals as effectively as possible. And sometimes it involves production-related matters. People have to be comfortable and fed and safe. That's the most important thing. Everyone has to feel that they're taken care of. But that's just another line on the ledger that you have to consider as you're trying to achieve these creative goals.
Yeah.
And so I think about that a lot, like how, because I don't think they're separate things, right? Like production and the creative choices, it's all one hand, feeds the other, right? So you have to make sure that you're taking care of both on a movie.
So tell me, you make this short film at USC. It wins a bunch of awards, and then you get a lot of attention from it. This with the monkeys and the sort of this like multiverse sort of idea, and then you get this opportunity to film. Like you get $1 million to shoot your first film, your first feature for Universal.
So what happened was I took my thesis film, The Tower of Babel, from USC, and I actually spent probably more time and more money trying to get it into film festivals and contests, because what I quickly figured out, and I give this advice to people these days when they say, how do I start my career? I say, apply for every grant, enter every contest you can, because what people don't realize is that someone has to win. And the people who run these things are so desperate to find someone who isn't going to be disappointing that if you have any potential, they're going to be thrilled.
Great.
Right? And so I say, apply.
Where do you get these grants?
I mean, they're everywhere. You just got to find them online and apply
because
them.
I just shot a short honoring my dead mother.
You're a little more accomplished than most of these filmmakers who I'm giving advice to.
But I do want grants, because grants would really help, because I just put all my own money, and we're having like an incredible team, and I'm like, oh my God, you're never supposed to put your money in that.
Yeah, that is one of the first rules.
I know that's one of the rules, but
money.
It's my mother. It's both my parents are dead. You gotta.
So there was this thing called the Chrysler $1 Million Film Festival that was a contemporary of Project Greenlight, and they actually tried to sell it as a reality show. Fortunately, they didn't. I got into the second year, and they took 25 short films. They put them online. People had to vote. Based on that, I made it to the top 10. They took the top 10 filmmakers to Cannes during the Cannes Film Festival. While we were there, we had to make a new short film that featured a Chrysler over 7 days. Based off of that film, I made the top 5. The top 5 filmmakers moved into a mansion together in Westwood for a month. We had to write a feature screenplay. We had to shoot 5 minutes of it, design a poster, and then pitch it at the Toronto Film Festival to like a blue ribbon panel. And they picked, of those 5, one person got $1 million grant to go make a feature for Universal. I won that whole thing.
Oh my God.
With the help of my best friend, Bo Bauman, who was my producer and co-writer at the time. And but then they canceled the contest. They didn't give us the money. We then spent like a year trying to get the money out of them. It was this whole saga. We eventually shot the movie in Virginia, but then they like tried to shut us down. I mean, it's such a long story. It's too long to go into right now.
Why did they take the money away?
It's so complicated because we had these 3 entities. You had Universal, you had Chrysler, you had this company called Hypnotic. No one was talking to each other. We're just trying to launch our careers. We're actually fully lying to some of them, saying we have the money, so they'll give us their part of the money so we can start shooting. We went to my hometown, my home state, I should say. The film industry in Virginia really embraced us. My mom had just passed away, who was a politician, so we had a lot of goodwill. We were getting locations for free. We were getting production support for free. The Film Commission really got behind us. It was just a crazy time in my life. And we finished the movie, and then they didn't even want to release it. And there was a whole other saga trying to get it released. I mean, it's just a crazy story. Eventually, it got in theaters. It did okay in theaters. It did really well on DVD, and it got me in the game, most importantly.
Wow. And then you eventually went on to the iconic Kick-Ass 2.
Yes, that was an interesting moment in my career. So I made Cry Wolf with the Universal money.
Wait, hold on. Hold on. Sorry. I know he said not to interrupt you. He was like, don't interrupt him. And I know. Damn it. But Cry Wolf, this was when I read this about, it was a budget of 3.5 and made 100.
No, that was Truth or Dare. Cry Wolf we made for $1 million, and it made about 15 theatrically.
Got it.
I think it did very well on DVD. Those numbers are Truth or Dare. Truth or Dare, which I made for Jason Blum, we made for 3.5, and it made about 100 theatrically.
That's amazing.
Yeah. No, Universal really supported the film, which was a big part of that.
Oh my God. Did you get a cut of that?
I did get a small cut of that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's the upside of working for Blumhouse. In success, they really take care of you.
Yeah, I did a film with them, The Purge, the Forever Purge.
Yeah, the Forever Purge.
Yeah. I was playing one of the crazy villains.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that?
I did. Okay. I did. Yeah.
It's different than a Christmas movie.
I mean, two extremes.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I kind of feel like what happens if you compartmentalize your happiness a little too much, your shadow will just come right bite you from, like it'll just, come right out, and the rage will, sort of, because you have to, be fully integrated in the world and have, so I guess those were two very, very extremes.
We all contain multitudes.
Yeah,
so
we
those
do.
are two of yours.
So Kick-Ass too.
Yes, Kick-Ass too. So what happened was I made my second film, which was called Never Back Down, which was an ODA. I did not write that. It was an open directing assignment. And that was a different time in Hollywood where studios would greenlight movies without directors, and then it would be like a bake-off to see who could get the job. I got that job, made that movie, but then Hollywood was really changing. The era of the shooter was ending. Sort of the the music video commercial director who would explode and get offered all these scripts. That was ending, and writers were sort of disposable back then. It was like, oh, get a new writer. Writers were treated like shit, to be honest.
Yeah.
And what was happening was you were starting to see the advent of like the content creator, the J.J. Abrams, the Greg Berlanti, the Peter Berg, these filmmakers who are also writers too.
Yeah.
And were writing a lot of their own things. So ODAs were going away. There were no more open directing assignments. Open directing assignments.
Oh.
So that's what Never Back Down had been, right? A movie that the studio was making without a director already in place.
Got it.
They don't do that anymore. And so my career was in trouble. Like I was like looking at teaching jobs. I was having a real problem because I'd stopped writing at that point. Because I'd kind of come up during the era of the shooter. And so I had been told, you're not a writer, you're a director, just focus on directing. So I'd stopped writing. And then I was looking around, I was like, I'm giving all my ideas to these writers. They're making, enough money to pay their mortgages.
That's
I'm not.
right.
Movies I'm working on are not getting made for whatever reason. I gotta change something up. So I wrote 2 movies on spec. I wrote this movie called Bloodshot, which eventually got made with Vin Diesel. And through that, I met Matthew Vaughn, who had made Kick-Ass. And we were talking about Kick-Ass 2, and I told him what I would do with it. He was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Maybe you should do it." And then so I just over the holidays I just wrote the script without permission or a deal or anything.
Wow, how long did it take you to write it?
I mean, we'd been talking about it for a while, and there was a comic book that already existed, but I think I probably cut the draft in like a month.
Oh my God.
It's what we talked about earlier about pressure.
You love it.
When you're under the gun, you can get it done. At
Yeah.
least I can. And he liked it, and he said, we should make this. And I said, well, I want to direct it. And so I sort of insisted, and it was a great experience. I learned a lot from that movie. One thing I definitely learned is I do not want to make a sequel for someone else's movie again.
Oh, wow.
It was tricky. It's hard it's a hard line to walk where you're trying to like bring your own thing to something, but you're also trying to honor the thing from before, but it wasn't your thing from before. So you're not really connecting to it on a deeper level.
Right.
And also it wasn't just Matthew's thing. It was also Mark Millar's thing because he created the comic book. It was a hard situation to be in. I learned a lot. I made some great friends. I'm very proud of the movie. I don't know if I would kind of go into that dynamic again.
I think one of your films was like the sequel was better, because normally, or, they always say like after the second film, it's like, it's always like the first film was great and that's why they do a sequel and it's always wah wah. But supposedly on the internets, they were saying that yours was better.
I will not comment. I will not comment on that. Listen, I've got plenty of haters, plenty of supporters. Sure. I'm very grateful for anyone who watches the movie and likes it. And back to my earlier point, makes meaning from, for their own lives from seeing that story. So I love hearing that.
And how was working with the cast? Jim Carrey, an icon.
He is amazing. I mean, Jim Carrey is a force of nature. And, one of the things I've learned as a director is that even though I think like I have a special skill set and I do think I'm talented, at the end of the day, none of us have jobs without these actors who can do these amazing things that none of us can do. And I think maybe I understand that from having done a little bit of acting myself. Like I know how hard it is. And anytime like I'll catch the crew like rolling their eyes or moaning about like an actor being late to set or something we have to do to take care of an actor, I'll just turn to them so quickly and I'll say, hey, we don't have jobs without these people. Yeah. You have to remember that. The only reason we're employed right now is to support this cast so they can do the best work they can possibly do. So we got to do that and we got to remember that. And Jim Carrey he is a rock star. He is a force of nature. It was a privilege to be with him on set. I learned a lot from him. I tried some things that were growing experiences for me, and I learned, and it was a process. It was a process. I'm tap dancing around this a little bit. I mean, he's a genius, and geniuses are complicated people.
Totally.
And so sometimes you just have to like sit back and let them do their thing. Other times you have to like lean in and say, well, what about this? And finding a way to exist in that space with someone who is so supremely talented is challenging. It's challenging.
It's like it's one of those like top racehorses. They're kind of fussy. They're kind of like, but they're ready to go and they'll win the race.
Yeah.
And so what was his process like?
I mean, he came with so many ideas. He was very respectful to me always. I don't want to make it sound like he was difficult or anything. He definitely was not difficult. He's an incredibly polite guy. Yeah. A lovely
I've met him.
person.
He's so lovely. Yeah.
But it's just a lot. It's a lot. It's everything you imagine and more. Right?
So like Robin Williams, it's like
it's a lot. And then also you have to like kind of
manage
he's the motor, but you're still steering the ship.
Sure.
Right? And so like when you got this motor that's going 250 miles an hour and you're trying to steer the ship, it's challenging. So his process is that he shows up with a lot. He's got a lot of ideas. You have to take them all in.
So you have to reel him in. Your job is to reel
him in because you also have to let him do what he does.
Right.
Right. Like if you squash it, then why have Jim Carrey?
No, but I mean, it's sort of like, because I'm kind of one of those. I mean, I'm not comparing myself to Jim Carrey, but I think I can be a big personality. So like I'm not on my marks sometimes, and I'll improv and I'll kind of like, and then I have to kind of try things like in rehearsal process, and I'll go big as I need to, and then you refine it and you kind of then you find the performance and you find the moments, and then you're like, oh, this worked and this didn't, and that's what I mean by reeling it in.
Yeah, it's a dance. I mean,
I'm not squashing it. You're just refining.
Exactly, and I view it as being the lead actor's dance partner, right? I can't just be like, yeah, do your thing. I'll just point the cameras at you. That's not going to work. I also can't be like, no, hit this mark, say this line, do this.
That's a terrible process. I hate that.
That's not going to work either. So it
kills the spirit.
Yeah, it's his dance. It's like, okay, this thing is important to me. This thing is not. I see what you're doing here. That wasn't really my plan, but I can change my plan to incorporate that.
Happy accidents?
Yeah. You just kind of got to like find your way. It's a dance.
Yeah. On my last film, we were thinking about having a production company called Happy Accidents.
Yes.
Because the amount of things that we would lose a location, this would happen, it would be raining. We'd be like, we'd have to pivot and do all these things. And the film that I funded. Yes, I know. Yes, I can feel your judgment. I can feel your judgment.
I'm sure it's going to make a lot of money and you're going to get it all back.
I'm not going to make any money. No, but I think its return has given me already so much in just the lesson of putting your money where your mouth is and going big or going home. And like life it's short and it's long, but it's like if people on their deathbeds, they talk about the things that they regret and the things that they didn't do. And so, I had an opportunity. So I was like, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah.
That's sort of my mind. But on, learning about happy accidents, that was sort of the big deal of our biggest thing was like throughout the whole thing was if there's like a moment where it's like you're finding a moment, something like ridiculous happens, just go with it. Keep the happy accidents, keep them going.
Yeah, you just got to embrace it. The deathbed comment made me think of something in film school. We had a guest speaker who'd say, no one on their deathbed ever said they wish they spent more time at work. And I was such a little shit. I raised my hand and he called me and I said, yes, but do they interview people on their deathbed who didn't spend a lot of time at work?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's very true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And the other thing I wanted to say too that I was thinking about while you're talking was the trick of making a movie, right? Yes, you have to dance, you have to improvise, you have to embrace the happy accents. But I'm also amazed how often my job comes down to the simple task of just telling people, no, we're not stopping. Like, I know everyone's tired. I know everyone wants to go home. Everyone thinks like we've done enough takes or this is good enough, but it's not. I know where we need to go. It's right here. So everyone just go do your thing. We're just going to keep pushing. We're not stopping.
Yeah.
And so even though sometimes you have this instinct to improvise or just embrace this thing that didn't go the right way, sometimes the director, the producer's job, or even the number one on the call sheet's job is to say, no, we're still going.
Yeah.
We're going to keep pushing until we hit that thing that we all agreed we were going to get to when we started this day.
Yeah. How was working with the rest of the cast on such a big film and big stunts? And I mean, it was like a stacked cast.
It was a great cast. And really, that's a testament to...
Aaron Taylor-Johnson, who's, he's going to be probably the next Bond.
I know, he's so good.
He's such so a legend. Good. And Chloe Moretz was like incredible. She's hilarious. Yeah. She's amazing.
But also then John Leguizamo is one of my favorite actors ever. Christopher Mintz-Plasse is so good. Clark Duke is in the movie. Yeah, the cast is fantastic on the film. And it's really, honestly, a testament to how beloved the first film was. I feel very privileged that I got to make that sequel because so many people showed up because they loved the first film. And then I think they were excited about the script I wrote for the second one. It was an amazing ensemble.
Yeah. And how is Aaron, he's holding this film on his shoulders. I mean, what was that to be like? He's like early 20s, got this huge film career that's, popping off, and it's, this huge franchise that blew up that essentially really kind of launched him. Yeah.
Aaron is just, he's a prince. He's such a good guy, such an artist.
Yeah.
He's not in this to be famous. He's in this to be an actor, like a real actor. That's what he cares about. And I loved working with him for that reason. His commitment is just next level. In fact, he was so committed to looking, because the story of Kick-Ass 2 really was about, the first film was about a normal kid who wanted to be a superhero. And then the second film was about him actually rising to the challenge and becoming that hero.
Yeah.
And Aaron was so committed to that idea, and he was working out so much.
He was ripped.
Oh my God, he was so ripped. But he was putting on so much muscle that he couldn't fit in the suit anymore. We had to keep altering the suit. And finally I had to sit him down. I had to say, Aaron, we're shooting this movie out of sequence. So I can't have you looking like a linebacker in one scene and the next scene looking like just a really fit guy. We got to find some sort of neutral spot to land it. And he totally got it, and he understood. He's incredible talent.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I feel like the top actors, they have a very similar mindset to athletes. It's that same, I was sitting here with Marty Fish, who is a top tennis player in the world. And I grew up with him, and we were just talking about, it's kind of just the similar mindset of you're doing everything in your power. You eat, you sleep, he wouldn't go out. He wouldn't do anything. He's he wouldn't even go see a movie when he was in game time, and it's all year round.
Yeah.
And so he was, just spending 8 hours a day, playing tennis, being super fit. And I kind of think, for somebody like Aaron, he probably was, doing full days, everything in every single shot. And then on top of that, he's going home and working out for 2 hours.
And he has kids, and he's married and has kids.
Oh my God!
All the time, yeah. He still does, but he was a young dad, and he was
oh my God,
too. No, he's really an impressive guy.
Wow.
I'm not surprised at all that he's going to be the next James Bond. I mean, you could I knew it when we were making the movie. I was like, this guy's going to be Bond at some point.
Wow. Yeah. So you knew it.
Yeah.
Kind of like Warren Beatty knew that you were going to have a career.
No, I do not think they're analogous at all, but I appreciate it. Appreciate the comparison. Yeah.
So real quick. So, and how, so navigating this, big personality and iconic actor that Jim Carrey, and then, he sort of had this, these epiphanies in his life. Was that around the same time that he was kind of having these, because I think also he was like, I think he regretted doing them, or like, I guess some intense violent scenes, because I thought the movie was really fun and great. And normally, I think he was going through just a metamorphosis in his soul of what stories do I want to tell?
I mean, he's an artist, and he's going to have strong feelings about things, and his emotions are strong, and I think, it's interesting. Look, the character he plays in the movie has guns, but the guns aren't loaded, right? Like, that's an important plot point. And he's a character who's inclusive, who wants all people who want to be superheroes to be a part of justice forever, right?
Yeah.
So some of the things he was railing against weren't really a part of his character or a part of the world that we had created. So it was a little bit confusing for me. Ultimately, I support him, whatever he wants to say, whatever he believes, he's entitled to those beliefs, and he should express them with a full throat. And so, listen, there's no such thing as bad press. So if ultimately he didn't want to support the film,
unless you're Diddy,
yes, unless you're involved in a freak off, that's
it was way worse than that. But
So listen, while it was a little strange that he didn't want to support the film, I ultimately support him.
Yeah, I love Jim Carrey. He's amazing.
Yeah. And look, it didn't hurt us from a publicity standpoint.
Yeah, cool. So then you started working with Blumhouse, and then you also signed. Well, actually, hold on. Before you started working at Blumhouse, you worked with Carrie Aaron to create Bates Motel.
Yeah. Well, let me be clear. I did not create Bates Motel. Carrie Aaron and Carlton Cuse created Bates Motel, but it was a really kind of interesting time in TV. It was before Netflix was making all these original shows, and Amazon, and the idea of sort of like a 6-episode TV show or a 13-episode TV show wasn't really a thing back then. It was just starting. And I had a general meeting with Carlton Cuse, who's become a real mentor of mine as well. And after the meeting, he called me up and he said, and he has a very deep voice. He has a very distinct, unique cadence. And he called me up. He said, Jeff, I'm thinking of doing this show about Psycho, about Norman Bates. And I said, Carlton, I do not think that is a good idea, because the Gus Van Sant movie had just come out a couple years earlier with Vince Vaughn and Anne Heche, and it was a disaster. And I said, listen, that movie is beloved. That story's been told. I don't think it's a good idea. By the way, that's a theme of my career, as I say to these powerful people all the time, like, I don't think that's a good idea.
And then you do it.
Yeah.
And then you're part of it.
Well, then he said to me, I'll never forget this moment. And then he said, well, I have this idea that Norman has a brother. I was like, oh,
that's interesting.
That's interesting.
That's a twist.
Yeah, because we haven't really thought about other children in that family.
Yeah.
It's a different point of view, a different way to tell the story. Okay, yeah, I'm into that. And so A&E ordered 6 episodes of the show, and there was no pilot yet. And in the writer's room was just Carlton, Carrie Aaron, who went on to create the morning show.
Yeah. We almost worked with her, by the way.
She's amazing. She's amazing. And me. It was just the 3 of us.
Wow.
And I'd never been in a writer's room before. I didn't know what that entailed. I was in my early 30s, and the 3 of us just sat there, and I learned what it was to break a TV show, especially when you don't even have a pilot, from Carlton and Carrie. And it was an incredible experience. I learned so much. They're awesome talents. To just be in their presence was an education. And I'm really grateful for that experience, because not only did I learn how to break a TV show, I feel like I was able to help kind of form it in a very limited way. I mean, they were the creators. But then I got to write 2 episodes of the first 6. And so I felt a very strong sense of ownership. And I'm really grateful for that opportunity.
And what was the biggest takeaway? What was the biggest lesson that you learned? To
slow down. Carlton is a master of just kind of like slowing down and taking your time with the ideas. Because coming from features and, coming from a space where I don't have a lot of time and money, I'm just like, that's a good idea. Here we go. That's a good idea. Yep, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's do that. Oh, that's fun. Let's do that. And Carlton was like, slow down. let's just talk about it. Let's just think about it. And it was hard for me to do. It was very hard for me to do, but I learned it from him and Carrie, and I'm so grateful for that, because now I do slow down a little bit when I'm breaking the story. I don't necessarily go with my first idea, because often your first idea is not your best idea.
Sometimes can be, but
sometimes,
not always.
But you got to give it the time
to process.
Yeah, you got to ruminate a little bit.
That's interesting. Do you? I find that I also have a hard time sitting still. I think like if I have, I can if I'm chilling at home and I'm like, all right, like watching like a great, like, I don't know, Netflix or, HBO series or whatever. But do you find that that's sort of like that ADD mind where you're like, okay, it's sort of that adrenaline, just, that racehorse that wants to run.
Yeah.
And then the slowing down,
taking your time. I got some advice from my mom. It's one of the last things she ever said to me. She said, you feel things very strongly. It will always serve you well to sit with your feelings before you act on them. And so I'm a big believer in, like, when I need to write that email, I write it, and then I'm like, you know what? I'll send this tomorrow. And then I like reread it and I rewrite it, and I'm like, I'll wait another 24 hours before I send this. I mean, I convince myself I'm going to send it. I can't write it unless I know, if I have to be like, I'm sending this. I'm just going to send it tomorrow. So I write it, and then I'll send it tomorrow. And then the next day I reread it and I rewrite it a little less, and then I'll read it tomorrow. I'll send it tomorrow. And then I do it again. And by like the time, 5 or 6 days have gone by, I'm like, I'm not sending it. And so always sitting with things, letting the feelings kind of move through you before you act is one of the things that I try to do always in my life. And it's advice I got from my mom, and I'm so thankful for that advice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us are empaths in this, where we do feel so much. And then it's sort of like, it's at least kind of growing up in New England, you're not supposed to feel, and you're not supposed to, it's very Puritan ethics and very kind of that English, Irish sensibility, stiff upper lip.
Down,
yeah, push it down, drink your problems away.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
But we live and work in Hollywood with all these artists and actors, and it's their jobs.
It's your job
keep their
feel.
emotions on
all
the surface.
All the time.
Like, people talk about, are actors crazy? Are they hard to be around? I'm like, of course. You would be too if you had to keep your emotions on the surface all the time. You would be nuts.
Yeah.
It's a very hard way to live your life. That's why I have such tremendous respect for actors, and I try to protect their emotional health when we're on set, because I need them in that state.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting where I feel like as I've gotten older, it's like the ability to be so emotionally available, but I also find that it's like the more that, you can just deal with just all the trauma or whatever you have to deal with. So you can be just completely like, you're not hiding in any parts of yourself, So it's like this podcast, for instance, is like really just been kind of amazing, because I, every time that I'm like, ooh, like, I'm going to see that you're going to see that I'm suddenly like, oh, and then I'm like, well, here it is.
Here it is.
I got to just be myself.
Yeah.
And sort of what I mean, the gift that it's given me is the ability to be like, let you see all of me, sort of like in these conversations. And as an actor, you have to do the same. So it's sort of like you're going to dial up certain, qualities like a character. It's Matthew McConaughey talks about this, that for True Detective, he's like, I would just dial this up, and then I would just, turn that down, and, but it was like, version of me,
Yeah.
So like,
I think it always is.
Right.
I mean, with the exception of like a very small group of actors, most actors are just themselves in special circumstances.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like Al Pacino,
Exactly.
Robert De Niro,
Yeah.
And then there's Meryl Streep, who you worked with.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What
Yeah.
was that experience like?
So it was very brief. I did a PSA with her. It was just a one-day shoot. And she's such a pro and no nonsense. She is down to business. And it was fun to work with her. Like I remember there's this one line that she did not want to say. And
what was the line? Do you remember?
Honestly, don't even remember. It was a bad line. I didn't write this thing. It was like a PSA for colorectal cancer screening.
Oh, okay.
And she just didn't want to say it. But I had the client next to me, and she would hit me when Meryl wouldn't say the line. And I
was like, I can't get Meryl to say it.
I
I
remember shouting from Meryl, be like, hey, Meryl, can we just go back to that one line real quick, if you don't mind?
Can we go back to the rectal part?
and she said, but it's so hard to say it with any grace, right? Or so, maybe it's so hard to say the line with any, I can't remember her exact words. And then the client kind of looked at me, and I just shouted back from honor. I said, but if anyone can do it, it's you, Meryl, and action.
Did she say the line?
Yeah, she said the line. She said the line.
That's very true.
Yeah.
If anyone could say it, it's you.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Okay, so then you started to going back to I jump around a lot because that's what we do here. Going back to your Blumhouse deal. I mean, that's like kind of a big deal. So now you signed, or you have like a whole deal with them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. So I did a deal with them, I think probably in like 2019, right after Truth or Dare, maybe. So I've made 3 movies for Blumhouse: Truth or Dare, Fantasy Island, and Imaginary. And it's been an incredible experience. You know, the budgets are small and the schedules are tight. But what Jason does so well is that he empowers filmmakers. You know, he says, here's the box you can play in, and now go tell your story and do whatever you can to get it done. And we'll look at the cut together. And I flourish in a system like that. And in many ways, it's just sort of a bigger version of what I do with the Adrenaline Film Project, which is like, these are the parameters, and you got to figure out a way to tell the story you want to tell within them. And that's what I've done for Jason, and had a lot of success with it. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
You know what's really interesting? It forces you to be more creative, I found.
Yeah.
Like it really, because, you know, if you're playing in a certain box, this is just what I found, that I'm like, okay, it forces me to really, you know, think about every possibility within that box. Because you're like, you know, if you have free range, you can go anywhere, and then you can, you know, you can kind of lose the plot with like, just like, whatever. Yeah. Whereas like when you have parameters and you're like, okay, how can I make this the most interesting, the most creative, the most, you know, basically like, how am I going to, if I think this is fun and interesting, then the audience is going to feel that it's fun and interesting.
Yeah, no, that's very true. One of the things I say during the short film workshop that I teach is I say, when you're in a box, the only way out is up.
Yes.
So when people complain about like the obstacles we're putting in their way, or the parameters of the workshop, like, why do I have to use this prop, or why do I only have a day and a night to shoot my scenes? Why can't I keep shooting? I say, listen, these are just the parameters we've created. So now it's your job to be creative and figure out a way to rise to the occasion.
Yeah. It's kind of similarly going back to that first film, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You know, you have, that's one of the first things I learned in Duke, like improv class, where, you know, you have to say one word and you have to find every single, like, you know, meaning to like, just, oh my God. Well, like what can, you know, that same sort of concept. And, you know, you can go so many different ways with it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It was kind of what we did in Tower of Babel, the short film, with just the same words and finding different meaning in those different contexts.
And do you guys have a quick turnaround schedule for those films?
Yeah. We screen them that night.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So we kick it off on a Wednesday. They have to pitch me Wednesday night. They have to then write their scripts overnight. Then Thursday, I work on the scripts with them. We help them prep it with the other industry mentors. Then Friday night, they start shooting. Saturday, they shoot. Saturday night, they bring their footage in. We start uploading it to the computers. They cut all night Saturday night. I come in on, I'm sorry, wait, I missed my turn. Thursday, Friday. No, yeah, they cut all night Friday night.
Wow.
And
so they don't sleep. It's like SNL.
Oh, yeah, they don't sleep. Then I come in Saturday, we work the edits together, and then we screen them Saturday night. I think I screwed up the timeline. We start Wednesday, we write Thursday, they shoot Thursday night, shoot Friday day. Friday night, they upload their footage. Saturday, we're cutting. Yes. It's 72 hours. It's 72 hours. That's all you need to know.
That's impressive.
Yeah. No, and then we screen them Saturday night and have a party.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so going back to the Blumhouse and playing in this sandbox, so how many films have you done so far?
I've done 3 for Blumhouse so far. I did Truth or Dare, Fantasy Island, and Imaginary, which was in theaters in March.
Oh, wow. And do you have a quick turnaround schedule for that?
Yeah, I mean, those movies usually take about a year. I think, you know, Truth or Dare and Imaginary were a little less than a year. Fantasy Island was a little bit longer than a year. I'm talking about from green light till in theaters.
Wow.
So it's pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's pretty quick.
That is pretty quick.
Yeah. I have this dream that I keep pitching Jason, which is I want to shoot 2 movies back to back.
Oh.
Like I want to use the same shooting crew and just roll straight into the next one.
That's awesome.
Because I find I always have this strange feeling when I finish a movie, even though I'm exhausted and I got nothing left to give.
I know. Yep.
There's a small part of me that wishes somehow all the footage got destroyed and that we just started over right away. Because like literally the day after we wrap, I would like to just start over on day one again, because I've learned so much. The crew has gotten so tight. We know each other so well.
It's a well-oiled machine now.
I figured out the characters. I figured out my actors. I know how to do it. And I'm like, and we're stopping. I know what I'm doing. Like, let's keep going. So that's why I desperately want to shoot 2 movies back to back, so I can take all those lessons that I've learned and just roll right into the next one.
I mean, that sounds amazing. Couldn't you, I think The Bear did that. I think you could do like that with a TV show. Like they had 2 weeks off.
And then went into the next season.
And then went into the next season.
Yeah.
2 weeks off.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's basically a TV concept, right?
Yeah. That's a TV show.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Would you ever consider doing TV?
Yeah, I mean, I've sold a bunch of pilots. I've actually sold every pilot I ever took out. I think I've sold about 10 or 11 pilots.
Wow.
Is that all?
Yeah.
That's, I know. Thanks. Jesus.
I mean, listen, I love pitching. Pitching is just storytelling, and that's where my acting experience comes in handy, because I can really like tell the story. It's like a little monologue.
Yeah.
The way I actually sold my first pilot, it's a funny story. So it was that time when I wrote Kick-Ass and Bloodshot. I felt like my career was in trouble, and I was shadowing in all these TV shows as a director. I couldn't get a job. Because the way TV works, it's like the script supervisor is going to get the next episode before like a new director, which doesn't make any sense to me, but okay.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get a job, and it was making me crazy. But I was looking around, and the concept of the showrunner wasn't really out there back then. I mean, it existed in Hollywood, but most lay people didn't understand. Like we knew that, like a David Chase was running The Sopranos, but you didn't really realize that every show had a David Chase. Every show had a showrunner, right?
Yeah.
And so by shadowing on these TV shows, I was starting to realize that. I was like, oh, every show has this kind of one person. It's like basically the version of a film director, but for the show. And I was like, I want to do that. And so I went to my agent. I said, hey, I got an idea for a TV show. And he was like, well, do you have a sample episode? I was like, no. He's like, you don't have anything? I was like, no, I've never written a script that was like for a TV show. He's like, well, then you can't do it. And I said, well, I got a pretty good idea. And he's like, well, you can't do it. You can't do it. And so I started using my own connections to get a couple of pitch meetings. I told him, I said, well, I got a meeting at this place or that place. And he was like, well, we don't represent them. And I was like, well, I got the meeting. He's like, well, we'll get you some meetings too. And so I started getting all these meetings, and I'm not going to name any names, but I pitched at this one big TV company, and they passed. And I was like, pretty disappointed, because I did my thing. Like I'm very good at pitching, and I was so nervous. I wanted to do a good job, so I was really buttoned up and rehearsed. It was like this one-man show. I would do like dialogue from different characters. I had like a really pithy opening and closing. I mean, it was really honed, and they still passed. And I said to my agent, I said, well, can you get some feedback and find out why they passed? And I'll never forget this line until the day I die. Their response was, we like Jeff. Please don't put us in a position where we have to pass on him again. Which basically means that is the hardest pass you can get. There's nothing you can do or say to change it. They have passed. I was like, I don't understand what I did wrong there. I said, well, cancel the other meetings now. Clearly I'm a hack. I don't know what I'm doing. And my agent was like, but you set these other meetings. You got to go. So I went to one of these other meetings. They loved it. That afternoon I was in front of like the principal at the production company. He loved it. Like 3 days later, I was in this major TV studio, the biggest in town. I skipped all the lower levels of executives. I was pitching the head of the studio. There was like
go.
15 people in the room. I'm on fire, but I'm like 90 seconds into the pitch, and he stops me. He says, I'm sorry, we're already doing a show about this with this other production company. It was the first company I had pitched.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Motherfucker.
Yeah.
You got to tell me who that is after the show.
And so everyone is freaking out. People are standing up. They're like, wait a second. They're like, you can see the lawsuit starting to form. And I had this epiphany. It's the whole thing we talked about, pressure. There was such tremendous pressure. I just got really calm. I felt everything slow down.
You love it.
And I had this idea.
The fight or flight.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I know what I need to do right now. And I said, you know what? It doesn't matter what my characters are doing for work. What I find interesting is their dynamic. And I just jumped to the character section of the pitch, and I started doing the dialogue and playing both parts and doing my little one-man show. They're laughing. They're having a great time. It's an action comedy that I'm selling. And at the end of the pitch, the head of the studio goes, you know what? We're going to buy this.
Wow.
But you got to figure out something else they do for work, because this other company is going to get that job for their show, but you do your characters, just give them a different job. And so I sold the pitch.
I can't fucking believe that.
Yeah. So just when it seemed like the world was crashing down, there's no way I was going to sell this pitch. I like seized
happy accidents.
success from the jaws of defeat. Yeah. I don't know if it was an accident. Like that was like
I feel like
a game day.
But it's kind of like
moment.
fate. If they were going to steal an idea, they were going to steal it.
Yep.
Like that's just how it was going to go.
Yeah.
Like these, they just, God, it's like they're thinking that that's the great idea, but like, why? That makes no sense to me. I'm like, okay, well, and did it end up going?
So I wrote the script. I figured it out. It was hard to figure out what else they were doing for work, but I figured it out. And they ordered the pilot. We shot the pilot. They wouldn't let me direct it, which was weird at the time. And the pilot did not go to series, which was a bummer. But it got me in the TV game, and
That's awesome.
And I got this great pilot quote off of that because they knew that I had gotten kind of screwed. So
it
ended up working out for me.
That's awesome. What happened to that other show that they stole?
I think it did like half of one season before it got canceled.
God,
but it was my idea.
Oh my God. So you never decided to be like motherfuckers?
No, here's what I did do for a couple years after that. I got kind of hot as a pilot writer for a few years.
Totally.
After that. And this company, because they were one of the
11 pilots,
one of the biggest companies in town, they every year would ask me to come in. This is the company that took my idea. They would ask me to come in so they could pitch me some of their ideas, some IP that they were trying to develop, and I'd always take the meeting and I would just pass on everything.
That's just in spite.
Yeah, I would just like sit there, I'd let them pitch me. I'm like, interesting, not for me, thanks.
You know what's really funny? It reminds me of Larry David when he developed a spite store. Did you see this? Did
No,
you see
I
this
don't
episode?
remember this. I don't remember this episode.
So I think it was like the last season. It was the second to last season, or it was the last season, second to last, where it was. I think Mila Kunis was in that season too. So there was Joe's Coffee, and
Yes.
so like Joe's
Mocha
Coffee,
Joe.
Mocha Joe,
Mocha Joe.
Mocha Joe. Hey, what's
I
it?
remember
The
Mocha
Mocha
Joe.
This, the scone. The scone is supposed to be soft. It's not supposed to be hard. Why is it hard?
You do a very good Larry David.
I'm like,
I'm seeing a Halloween costume.
you don't understand. He is my spirit animal.
Okay.
He is my, I have
I'm
more.
sorry.
No, but he is my spirit animal. I have more of a heart.
Okay.
But I find myself in those sort of predicaments where, anyway, I wouldn't do a spite store. That would be something I would never do. But I feel that, so he did a spite store where because of Mocha Joe, he's like, the coffee was cold and the scone, it was supposed to be soft. Why isn't that soft? And then so then he decides to build a store because they get into this whole argument and they get into like, never again. It's like no
Yep,
soup
I
for you
remember
kind of
that.
deal. So then he builds a store.
His own store next door. I
Right
do
next
remember
to
this
him.
episode.
So then he and so they go at it, and eventually there's a fire somehow. I don't know, and it all burns down. He's like, well,
Yeah.
And so everyone was talking about his spite store, and he's meeting with Mila Kunis to come to the spite store or something, and all these like
I
celebrities.
took spite meetings after that pitch.
You might have more Larry David in you than
I know.
Don't
Don't we all though? Don't we all?
I'm owning it.
That's the brilliance of that show.
Saying?
That's the brilliance of the show.
You judged me a little harsh, and then you were like, yeah, I kind of did it.
Yeah, you got me. You got me. It's true. We all have our Mocha Joe.
We all have our Mocha Joe. And then have you stopped pitching to them?
No, because the churn of Hollywood. I mean, the executives that come and go. I mean, that was so long ago. The only person who remembers that story is me at this point.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. And so when can we see this latest film for Netflix?
I mean, that's up to them. I just got some notes on the rewrite. They were pretty minor. I'm super excited about it. I think it's the best script I've ever written.
Oh my God.
So hopefully we get to make it soon. We'll see.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Oh, that's tough. Can you give me like a topic?
Like for filmmaking, or just like maybe in life, like what's but the takeaway that helps translate to your world. I mean, obviously the thing that we like, kind of the theme that we talked about was like self-forgiveness and, and kind of, everyone's trying to do their best, even if it's like terrible,
Well, yeah, this kind of touches on something you've been talking about too, about just being your authentic self, just being okay with who you are as an artist.
Gotta be.
And what I was thinking about a little bit when you were talking about that was one of the things I tell directors. Like I had coffee with this guy who's about to direct his first feature, and he was asking me for advice. And I said, one of the hardest things about directing is looking at a group of people with a lot of money on the line, a lot of pressure, and saying, I know where I'm going, it's over there. That's actually not the hard part. That's what you need to do. You do that. And then some time passes, you're shooting the scene or whatever, and you realize, oh, this is wrong. I made the wrong choice.
Mm-hmm.
The hard part is then turning around to that group of people and with the same confidence and the same clarity and certainty, you got to say to them, I was wrong, but I do know now what we need to do. We need to turn around and go back the other way.
Good for you.
And not lose them.
Yeah.
And that is so hard to do. People, their natural instinct is like, I can't admit that I was
trust you.
wrong.
Oh, right. Because
I can't tell them. It's a sign of weakness. I'm just going to ride this thing in the wrong direction and figure it out later. Nope. You're not going to figure it out later.
Yeah.
Just own it. When I make a mistake on set, like if I shot the master from over there and I'm coming in for my coverage, I'm like, oh, I should be on the other side of the line. I just turn immediately to the actors and the DP and I say, you know what? We got to redo the master. It was a huge mistake to do it over there. It's not going to cut. Let's start over. Let's put the camera over there. Here we go. And you see them, they're like, oh, really? But you're just like, you just got to just say it. You just got to own it and you just got to move forward. And once you do that once or twice, people start to understand, oh, he's human. He's figuring things out.
Yeah.
He at least knows when he messes up and he's got an idea and we're driving forward. And if you have their trust, then they will support that. And I think that's one of the hardest things to do. And it's a great life lesson too. It's like when you know you've made a mistake, when you know you need to do something over, just own it, just admit it and just move through it.
Yeah. Yeah, I get punched in the face a lot and I will immediately own it. Like that's kind of my superpower.
Yeah.
Of like, you're just like, oh, yep, my bad. Okay. Moving right along. Where, you take the feedback, you take the criticism and you're like, okay, yeah. Like how do we, because you're just, I think instead of like taking those things personally or you take it on the chin and then you just keep moving forward. Well, where do I want to go? Where do I want to go? Where do I want to go?
Because
what do I want?
You're starting to acknowledge then that it's not just about like knowing what you want to do, whether it's making a movie, creating a performance, or living your life. It's not that you have this like clear vision of, it's got to be this thing and that thing, and then you're there. Mm-hmm. What you're saying is like, this is going to be a journey. This is going to be a process. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, mistakes are going to be made, but ultimately everything that we do will lead to the final product. The mistakes will be just as important as the successes, right? Mm-hmm. And so you just got to own it. You just got to own it.
And did you have any obstacles? Like what were your, because some people, starting out or on this process, there's like things that we have to, like blocks or obstacles. And, sometimes we can be in our own way. Did you have any of those? Or were you just pretty like, no, this is what it is and I'm just going to do it? And, was it more easier for you? Or did you have like challenges that you had to overcome?
I mean, Hollywood is hard.
Yes.
Hollywood is hard.
It's fucking hard.
And by design, there's way too many people that want to be here doing what we do and not many jobs. And there are fewer jobs every year, it feels like.
Yeah.
And so it's a hard industry to work in. And so you almost don't need to bring your own obstacles to the game. They put up so many in front of you already, right?
Yeah.
It's just so challenging. Like I remember in film school, we had a guest speaker who said the way he views his work is that every day he gets up and he runs as fast as he can into a brick wall. And it hurts. But he can't slow down. Every day he's got to do it just as fast and run just as hard, and it hurts just as much. And he said, and then suddenly one day, you just like run through the brick wall. Like there was an opening there suddenly, and you didn't even realize it. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm on the other side of this wall now. And it feels really great. And then you turn, you look, and there's another wall right in front of you. And you just got to start running towards that wall again. And that's the job. So I would say the biggest obstacle is just the nature of this industry. It's just hard. It's designed to be hard. And anytime someone gets a break on sort of unnaturally, like whether it's through nepotism or some sort of...
You're nepotism adjacent.
Yeah.
You've had some really great mentors.
I've been very lucky, but I would like to think I've earned some of those relationships.
For sure. But you
my
always
point
have
being,
to.
when people don't earn it, they often fall on their face because that process of like failing and getting told no over and over and over again, it hardens you and you get battle tested. So then when you do have that opportunity, you're ready.
Yeah. So there weren't any like personal like struggles, because I just noticed, just talking to people where there's sometimes it's like genius directors or genius actors can just get in their way sometimes because, I don't know. There's just...
I mean, my biggest obstacle is probably that I'm not a genius. I'm trying to think obstacles.
Or you didn't have any sort of like things to overcome.
I guess I have things to overcome.
Like a certain mindset. So the mindset was already there. You're like, I'm just going to do this and that's it.
Well, no, I mean, I guess I don't want it to sound like I don't have obstacles or challenges. I guess I just accept that they're a part of my life and my process. Obviously, like I have a very vocal inner critic that always tells me how awful I am. I got to deal with that. I had a personal tragedy. I lost my mom when I was in my early 20s, and that really messed with me for a long time. I was born without like a lot of my teeth. So I had to have all this dental work when I was a teenager that affected my self-esteem. So we all have our obstacles. We all have our challenges, but I guess the way I view my challenges is that they're as important to me as my strengths, with that they create the alchemy that is me.
Totally.
And I need all of it. So I don't really like say like, oh, that was a problem, I had to overcome that. I just sort of own that it's just who I am.
Have you made peace with that inner critic in your head?
I don't think I ever will.
Has it lessened, or is it still, just yelling and screaming at you? What is it? What does the inner critic say? Just like, oh, you're terrible. That shot sucks.
It's just you
Fuck
suck.
you.
Yeah, it's just you suck. You suck. You're so bad. You're lazy. You're a hack. I think one of the ways I do deal with it is that I don't know, I try to take stock of success. I try to acknowledge, oh yeah, this worked. I did do this. I'm happy about that. I do this thing. This is a funny little anecdote. I call this the Got Milk trick. So when I was growing up, the Got Milk campaign had just started. And one of the very first ads they did was this like 10-year-old maybe in like a loose fitting blue tank top, skinny little kid. And he's on like a soundstage, and there's one of those like freestanding mirrors. I think they're called like Chevalier mirrors. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
So there's a mirror in the soundstage, and in the mirror is this like really ripped guy in a blue tank top.
Yeah.
It's
like a little baby lion looking at the giant lion.
And the kid is holding a glass of milk, and he says to the guy in the mirror, he says, "Who are you?" And the guy in the mirror says, "I'm you if you keep drinking milk." And then into the mirror walks this like 90s babe in like a leotard, like cut up to her hips with like her hair in a scrunchie. And she like puts her arms around him, and the kid goes, "Who's that?"
Yeah.
He goes, "That's your girlfriend." And then he like shotguns a glass of milk. And I don't know why that ad stuck with me, but I do this thing called the Got Milk trick, which is whenever I'm down, like if I don't get a job or something doesn't go my way or a movie's getting bad reviews, I just think to myself, hey, if I could go back in time and be that guy in the mirror and talk to 10-year-old me and say, this is what your life looks like now, buddy. 10-year-old me would be so psyched. he would be so psyched. And so I think as long as you can kind of remember that and take stock of how far you've come in life, it's easy to not get overwhelmed by the critic. Not easy. You at least have a shot at not getting overwhelmed by the critic.
Yeah, I had this concept where, I'm like, what would future me of all the things, like, let's say it's like, I want to be, like having like $100 million so I can, do the films I want to do. Like, what would, $100 million me have to do in order, like where, so I guess when people talk about manifestation is merging current you with like future you, with that like version of you, really, really successful. And so I would, make these little changes of like, where I would be like feeling fear or feeling like, oh, how am I going to pay my rent? How's this going to happen? Like, oh my God, like, feeling anytime I feel fear or anytime that voice comes in of like, what the fuck are you doing? Is when I remember future me of like, okay, what would $100 million Susie do? Like who do I have to be? Like, how would I show up? How would I act? How would I walk? How would I behave? And so it's like merging those two together.
Yeah. Isn't there like expression like be the version of yourself that you want to be? Like that's like,
yeah.
like,
I think that's
for the job
quote.
you wish you had. Dress for the job you wish you had. That kind of idea. Like, yeah, I get that. Like one of the things I tell people when they say they want to be directors, I say, well, the first step is just say you're a director.
Yeah.
Like, no one's going to give you a job being a director unless you say you already are one. So just say you are one.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of fake it before you make it, but just decide that that's who you are. And that's the first step.
That's awesome. So you do occasionally celebrate those wins. Like I feel like on this process, it used to be like a very harsh critic, and then it turned into like, look at you go.
Yeah.
Look at you go. You're doing good. You're doing good. So it was sort of this like meme in my head, just being like, you're doing awesome. Yeah, ba ba ba. So like, it's also having those wins of, having that self-talk, are you constantly aware of that self-talk? Like, do you have an observer observing yourself, like being like, oh God, yeah, I know I'm beating myself up right now. Because sometimes it's necessary to have that hard talk. Like, you're like, hey, like, you should have listened to God on that one. You shouldn't have like said it. You shouldn't have like said it at this time and blah, blah, blah. It was the wrong timing. My tact sometimes isn't the best, or I'll know, like I'm very intuitive and I'm like, I'm just going to plow right through it. And then I'll just,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the tricks of life, right? You don't want to be one of those successful people who are unhappy.
Yeah.
Because they never are satisfied.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be someone who is satisfied with so little that you lose. And I don't mean just material things. I mean like, personal success, relationships, love, take your pick. You don't want to be someone who's satisfied with so little that you don't live a full life.
Yeah.
Right. So it's how do you balance those two things? How do you stay hungry for all the things that make life worth living?
Yeah.
While also enjoying the meal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been amazing. Jeff, this has been really awesome. I know you have to catch a flight, but this has been really awesome. I'm glad we got to go a little deeper.
I am too. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this format. I just did all this press for my movie in the spring, and like it feels like every interview is like 5 minutes and you just repeat the same question. So having a deeper, more meaningful conversation with you has been a real pleasure. So thank you.
Yeah, we're just having a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It's kind of like comedians and cars and coffee or whatever, sort of like that idea.
That idea would never work. I don't know what hack came up with that idea, but it ain't going to work.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, guys. This has been amazing. And I'll see you guys soon. Hey, guys. We got a cat here. If you like this video, please
like it,
comment,
subscribe,
so you can see more of our latest episodes. We would love that. And this fellow gentleman. What's her name again?
Ziggy.
Ziggy.
Do it for Ziggy.
Do it for Ziggy.
Get t-shirts, man. Do it for Ziggy.
That'll be our merch.
A whole nother level.